21 Arjun in Indralok, read by Nirvan Bajaj, Ikveer Bajaj and Siana Zaveri. Mahabharata, Chapter 21, Arjun in Indralok. Having acquired, O monarch, the celestial weapons from Shiva and the Lokapals, Arjun awaited the great vehicle of Lord Indra. Just then, the vehicle, guided by Matali, came through the clouds, illuminating the heavens. And as Arjun was thinking about the vehicle, Matali descended from it and addressed him thus: O fortunate son of Indra! Ascend the vehicle sent for you by Indra without loss of time. Your father Indra, the Lord of the Celestials, has commanded me to take you to him. The Lord himself, surrounded by rishis, Gandharvas and Asparas of Indralok, is awaiting to behold you. You will return after obtaining the weapons you seek. Arjun replied, O Matali, he who has not acquired ascetic merit does not deserve to ride this vehicle. So you are sent first, and after the horses have been reined in, I will occupy the vehicle, stepping into the high road of virtue with you. Matali did as he had been urged to do. Arjun, in the meanwhile, purified himself by a bath in the Ganga. He repeated his customary prayers and granted his pitris, his oblations of water. Lastly, he prayed to Mandar, the king of the mountains. O Mandar, you are the refuge of holy sages. It is through your grace that the Brahmins and Kshatriyas and the Vaishyas attain heaven. Happily have I dwelt in your height, and now I bid you farewell. Then, blazing like the sun, Arjun ascended the celestial vehicle. The vehicle coursed through the skies, and they became invisible to the mortals on the earth. Arjun beheld thousands of chariots of extraordinary beauty. There was no sun or moon or fire, but bright light shone by virtue of ascetic merit. He saw royal sages and Gandharvas, Gunyakas, Rishis and Asparas, all blazing with splendor. Arjun was filled with wonder and asked Matali to speak to him about the heavenly beings. Matali gladly replied, These, O son of Kunti, are virtuous persons, stationed in their respective places. It is these whom you have seen as stars from the earth. And finally, Arjun beheld Amravati, the city of Indra. It was the region of the virtuous alone, adorned with flowers of every season and sacred trees of all kinds. There he greeted all the celestials who were gathered to pay their reverence to the son of Indra. When he finally arrived at the gateway to the abode of Indra, he was greeted by bards and singers and beautiful Asparas. Arjun then proceeded to pay his respect to the great Lord Indra. Taking Arjun's hand, Indra made him sit beside him on his throne, which was worshipped by gods and rishis. And the Lord of the Celestials smelt like the head of Arjun, bending in humility, and even took him upon his lap. And as father and son sat, each radiant in his glory, the Asparas danced and sang to him. Sensing what was in the mind of Indra, the gods hastened to pay respect to the son of Kunti. Then they ushered Arjun into the palace of Indra, and where he lived in comfort. With the help of his divine father, he continued to acquire the knowledge of the great weapons all the while. Indra gave away the Vajra, his favorite weapon of irresistible force, which causes the cloud to produce thunder and the peacocks to dance. The son of Kunti remembered his brothers, whose sake he had set out in this quest for weapons. But at the behest of Indra, he lived for full 5 years in heaven, surrounded by every comfort and luxury. Then one day, Indra addressed Arjun.
O son of Kunti, learn the art of music and dancing from Chitrasen. This music of the celestials does not exist in the world of men, but you will benefit from it.
So Arjun, under the expert guidance of Chitrasen, mastered the celestial arts of dance and music. The two, Arjun and Chitransen became great friends, but the thought of his brothers and his mother Kunti always troubled him. One day, the great Lord Indra convened a large assembly in honor of Arjun's visit. To this assembly came the Rudras, Adityas, Ashwins, the sages, Yakshas, and the great Nagas. The illustrious members of the assembly then took their seats according to their rank and status. Then the Gandharvas began to pluck the strings of their veenas and sing charming songs of celestial melody. Then the Asparas began to dance. Arjun looked at Urvashi, who was a celestial maiden, and his eyes lingered long on her beauty. Later, knowing that Arjun's glances were cast on Urvashi, Indra secretly called Chitransen. O king of Gandharvas, go as my messenger to the foremost of Asparas, Urvashi, and tell her to wait upon Arjun. Through my grace, he has learnt about weapons and other arts, but now he should be conversant with the art of conducting himself in female company. Thus, told by Arjun, told by Indra, Chitransen went to meet Urvashi. Seated at ease, Chitransen then addressed her. O fair maiden, I have come with a message from the great Lord Indra. You know him of whom I have come to speak to you. He is famed for his gracefulness, his noble conduct, valor, intelligence, and unsurpassed strength. Arjun, by virtue of his devotions, his lineage, and his various skills, is capable of protecting our celestial regions. He is equal to even Indra. It is for his sake, O fair maiden, that our Lord Indra wants your assistance. Let the hero be made to partake of the delights of heaven at your feet. Urvashi, incomparably beautiful, smiled, and with a glad heart she answered,
In obedience to Indra, out of respect for you and moved by the splendor of the virtues of our Arjun, I accept him as my beloved. The god of love has cast his spell on me.
Urvashi, of rapturous smiles, sent away Chitransen and prepared herself to visit Arjun. She adorned her long hair with bunches of flowers, decked herself with necklaces of gold, and set out for the palace of Indra. In the twilight, her beautiful face seemed to mock the moon. And though the heaven abounded with many wonderful objects, yet when Urvashi walked along to Arjun's palace, the Siddhas and the Charanas watched her beauty in awe. At the gate of Arjun's abode, she sent word to him through the attendant. When the attendant returned, he said, You may enter, O fair Aspara. So she entered the palace of Arjun. But upon beholding her at night in his mansion, Arjun, with an anxious heart, got up to receive her with respect and closed his eyes out of modesty. Arjun saluted her in the manner an elder is saluted and offered her worship. O foremost of Apsaras, I bow to you in reverence. Command me and I shall wait upon you as a servant. Hearing Arjun speaking thus, O monarch, Urvashi flew into a rage. She then explained to him what had transpired between her and Chitransen.
Chitransen came to me at the behest of Lord Indra with a command for me to wait upon you. This commanded by your father and impelled by the god of love, I wish to serve you.
Hearing her speak in this manner, Arjun was overcome with embarrassment. Shutting his ears with his hands, he said, O blessed lady, it causes me great unhappiness to hear such words from you. You are worthy of being the wife of someone superior. I respect you like my mother Kunti or Sachi, the queen of Indra. It is true that I gazed at you with my eyes big with delight, but it was only with the thought that even this graceful lady is the mother of the Kaurav race. Hearing these words, Urvashi said,
O son of Indra, we Apsaras are appointed to give pleasure to all. Do not therefore elevate me to the status of superior. So, O Lord, do not send me away. Allow me to be devoted to you.
Arjun replied, Beautiful lady, May the laws of the four cardinal points and the points between them. Listen to what I have to say. I bow my head and prostrate myself at your feet, for you deserve to be worshipped as my mother. And it is your duty to protect me as your son. Thus addressed, Urvashi trembled with rage, and contracting her brows, she cursed Arjun, saying, "Since you have scorned a woman who came to your mansion at the command of your father and of her own free will, I curse you. You shall have to bide your time among women, unrespected and as a dancer. You shall be regarded as one of the destitute of manliness and disdained as a eunuch." Having cursed Arjun, Urvashi, still seething with rage, returned to her abode. And Arjun, without loss of time, sought Chitrasen and told him about his encounter with Urvashi. Chitrasen, in turn, narrated the happenings to Indra. Indra then called for his son in private and smilingly consoled him. "My mighty son, you have surpassed even great rishis by the patience and self-control you have shown. The curse that Urvashi is inflicted upon you will be to your benefit and stand you in good stead."
How?
"You have to pass the 13th year of your exile incognito. That is the time when the spell cast on you by Urvashi will work. At the end of the 13th year, you will regain your manhood." A relieved Arjun then ceased to think about the curse and spent the rest of his days in heaven, sporting with Chitrasen. O monarch, when men listen to his story of pure conduct and self-control of the son of Pandu, they become devoid of conceit and hypocrisy and lust and other vices. When Arjun was still in Indralok, the great rishis Lomasha arrived there in the course of his wanderings. He bowed to the great lord, but seeing Arjun seated on Indra's throne, the rishi wondered,
What acts of merit has he performed to occupy the seat that is worshipped by the gods?
Lord Indra perceived the thoughts of Lomash and said, "O Brahmashri, Arjun is no mortal, though he has been born among men. He is born of Kunti with my grace, and he has come here to acquire some weapons which he will use to cleanse the earth of all evil. O Brahman, Arjun and Krishna are none other than Nara and Narayana, who have been born on earth to ensure the prevalence of dharma. They lived in the sacred asylum of Badari at the mouth of the Ganga, an abode which even gods and illustrious rishis are not competent to behold. These rishis at my behest have been born on earth to rid her of all sin and exterminate the asuras who live in the netherworld. These asuras, strengthened by the boons, have become invincible to the celestials and are causing us great harm. Without doubt, either Krishna or Arjun can annihilate these wicked beings. So insignificant a task as this cannot, however, be that of Lord Krishna, for he is the embodiment of untold power, and its radiance shall destroy the whole universe. Arjun, however, can single-handedly destroy these asuras, and he is here for this reason. After having slain the enemies, he will go back to the world of men. But O Rishi, I request you to go to earth and seek Yudhishthir and tell him not to be anxious about Arjun. You will find him living in the woods of Kamyaka. Impress upon Yudhishthir that Arjun has not only mastered the weapons in order to encounter Bhishma and Drona, but also the art of celestial dancing and music. I implore you to accompany the mighty Yudhishthir and his brothers on their visits to various sacred shrines for bathing in sacred waters in order to cleanse their sins. And O Brahman, of great ascetic power, it would behove you to protect Yudhishthir during his wanderings over the earth from the fierce Rakshas who infest the mountains." After Indra had finished addressing Lomasha, the Brahman, Arjun reverently said to the Rishi, "Protect the sons of Pandu, O great Rishi, and under your protection let them visit the various places of pilgrimage and distribute charity to the Brahmins." These doings of the son of Kunti were certainly marvelous, but what did Dhritarashtra of great wisdom say when he heard of them? King Dhritarashtra, hearing of Arjun's visit to Indralok, said to Sanjaya,
My my wretched son, Duryodhana is indulging in worldly pleasures. His thoughts are sinful. The heedless fool will certainly destroy the whole world. On the other hand, Yudhishthira, who speaks the truth even in the just and has supreme warrior like Arjuna on his side, will certainly conquer the three worlds. Even the might and valor of Drona, Bhishma and Karna will be of no avail against the Pandavas, who have mastered the great weapons. My sinful sons are bent upon treading the path of self-destruction and want to fight with the mighty Pandavas.
Sanjaya to this said, O king, the sons of Pandu are indeed mighty and are filled with rage in the treatment and melted to the wife Draupadi. Driven by the desire to avenge the insult, Arjuna, after much endeavour, has succeeded in obtaining the blessings of Lord Shiva. And pleased with the devotion of Arjuna, even the Lokapals, who are the guardians of a quarter, have blessed him. A worried Dhritarashtra then said,
O Sanjaya, brooding over the terrible injustice done to the sons of Pandu during the game of dice, I am restless day and night and do not have a moment's peace. I am certain the Pandavas led by invincible Krishna will rout my legions.
Hearing these lamentations, Sanjaya said, of unlimited radiance and equipped with weapons, the Pandavas are invincible, even to the gods, and I believe will destroy your sons in war. O king, in spite of being able to prevent this injustice, you did not restrain your sons out of blind love for him. And Krishna, on hearing of the defeat of the Pandavas at the game of dice, went to the Kamayaka forest and gave assurance to the sons of Kundi. And when Yudhishthira approached Krishna in the forest to be the charioteer and guided war, he agreed. So be it. I shall slay the enemy in battle and restore to you and the brothers your wealth in Hastinapur, from where you will rule the earth. Yudhishthira accepted Krishna's words, but please slay my enemies at the end of our 13 year of exile. I have promised to live in the forest and I want to fulfill the promise. Consenting to these words, Krishna turned to Draupadi. O fair one, grieve no more. Those who have mocked you will reap the fruit of their act. Beasts of prey and birds shall eat their flesh, and the earth shall be soaked with their blood. So, O king, the end of their 13th year will be marked with a mighty battle. I, which Balram, Krishna, and Pradyumna, Shalyas, and Satyaki, Bhima, Arjun, the sons of Madri, and the Panchal princes will all participate. The Dhritarashtra then remembered and said to Sanjaya,
At the time of the game of dice, Vidur had warned that if the Pandavas were defeated at the game, it would certainly mean a terrible bloodbath and certainly destruction. I fear that Vidur's prophecy is destined to come true. I have no doubt that at the end of the exile, the Pandavas will wage war.
And thus ends the 21st session of our rendering of Veshopayan's recital of Vyasa's immortal Ithihasa, the Mahabharata. Stay tuned for Mahabharata chapter 22, and it is called The Reunion. Please subscribe to this channel, like, share and comment.